Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small, and it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Sorry about yesterday morning. On my travels to work yesterday morning, unfortunately, I was involved in a vehicular accident, a road traffic accident, and well, that was a situation, I suppose, the most horrible way to start your day. But you know, it's being sorted out. It's being sorted out. I did go to the police station, the Woodbrook police station, and kudos to the officers there. Really very helpful, really courteous, really kind, took the information, and even the other party involved in the accident was very cooperative. So I wouldn't say anything much further because an investigation is taking place. And following that, maybe we can discuss a bit more how we all need to be very careful out on the roads.
I find myself, just with my short commute to the studio every morning, too often, let's just put it that way, being annoyed at some of the craziness that I've seen on the roads. I've already said someone overtook me to break a red light in front of a police car. Just this morning, a car almost hit me as well, trying to merge. It's a situation where it's two merging lanes, and ironically, both sides want to cross at the same time. That's what I've noticed whenever I'm reaching to the merging lanes.
I think if we're not in a position to have operating, and I stress on the word operating, security cameras at traffic lights, we should have operating security cameras at most major intersections, because what I've realized, what I've witnessed, what I've seen is that one, it seems as though people forget what the amber light means, and people tend to forget that red light does not mean you still have 3 seconds to go. Red light means stop, and even when people are filtering into a lane, people do not use the indicator anymore. People are not indicating, they're just swinging into the lane.
My thing is, when people are filtering, people don't necessarily look. That's what it seems like. That's the problem. It's one thing if you see me and you're pushing in, based on how you're driving, I could tell that you see me and you're trying not to hit me. But it's another thing now if it looks almost as though if I don't avoid you, you'll be completely oblivious, or you're trying to force me out of your way by saying, well, if you don't want to get hit, you got to move. I'm not moving. I'm forcing it through. And I know in traffic, people might do something like that at slow speeds, but I'm talking about relative driving speeds.
And the thing is, the saying goes, you have to drive for every other driver out there on the road as well. But I understand that. And I agree. I think now it's not that you want to be overcautious when driving, because if you're overcautious when driving, it could be inconvenient.
Not just that, you could also, have
of
the
course.
reverse.
But whilst you have to drive for other drivers out there on the road, you cannot be the individual to be smart for ignorant people. That's the thing. And I think that's the attitude many people have adopted. I mean, we've always had this attitude of bouncemen, and people do not look when crossing. They just, from the pavement, hop onto the road. They don't care. If you bounce them, you're in the wrong as a driver. And that's a situation that is very unfortunate, to say the least. But now when it comes to drivers, it's just that it seems as though following the COVID-19 lockdowns, people have forgotten how to drive.
Well,
I get that impression.
I don't know if that was the cause. I mean, I think bad driving existed. Just the last thing I'll say about this is the unfortunate thing, and I think this is where a lot of people might have difficulty. As you said, don't try to be smart for bad drivers. You do have to kind of concede sometimes, because just because they don't care doesn't mean you could have the same attitude playing the game of chicken. Sometimes you just have to turn away.
I'm not saying not to be smart for ignorant drivers. I'm saying that it is difficult for you to always be the smart one for all the ignorance out there.
That's the point I was making, because sometimes you know what the right thing is, but it might even be unfair in the situation that the other person is basically getting their way, pushing through in a very disgraceful manner, shameless manner. But at the end of the day, it's like, look, I could try to fight him over who has right of way, and I might have legal right of way. But next thing you know, we bounce each other, and my day now gets a lot longer. Or I could just let him pass and lose 5 seconds of my day and have a little frustration as opposed to a lot of frustration.
And as much as we can see that there are instances when that is unavoidable.
True,
You know?
true. Well, folks, we actually do have some topics to get into with regards to what's been in the news from since yesterday. Some important stuff has happened. Some old stories have returned into the national spotlight. So let's finally start off today's daily review. So the first story that I wanted to highlight this morning, and I think you also spoke to me about it or sent me a message about it, and that, of course, is, well, the FUL reports that came out of the investigation, that came out of the process to find the next commissioner the first time from the previous Police Service Commission. Now a judge has basically ruled, well, no, it can't be laid in Parliament, and for all intents and purposes, it can't be disseminated into the public. It needs to be decided upon by the Police Service Commission and by the Commissioner of Police, which I find is very interesting.
Well,
that he
not decided upon. What Justice Devendra Rampersad delivered in his ruling yesterday was a partial victory for Gary Griffith, because as you know, first stated by the Prime Minister, he wanted to lay the executive summary of the report in Parliament. Now, Justice Rampersad has said that is not necessary, and we're blocking that because there's information within that report that could actually cause unremediable reactions, and you would not be able to fight this down very easily. So he's blocked the government, the Prime Minister, from laying the executive summary in Parliament. What he has said, however, for the benefit of the investigations that are currently being conducted by the Trans-Bengal Police Service as well as the Police Service Commission, he has stated that you are allowed to use the report at their discretion, but the information should not be revealed to the public. So Gary Griffith has his victory in one sense, but as the investigation continues from the police service as well as the Police Service Commission, then I guess we'll see what happens then. But at this point in time, we're not going to hear much further from this. I think Gary Griffith will enjoy his moment, but that's it for now.
But like you said, it's a partial victory, because it seems as though the ruling allows both the Police Service Commission / Commissioner of Police to have access to it. But also, I believe he did not necessarily block Cabinet from accessing the contents as well. The thing is, though, I don't think that he necessarily blocked it from ever being put out in the public. So the situation could advance further if I guess a broader investigation is undertaken. And it seems as though some of former Commissioner Griffith's arguments in his defense were not necessarily agreed with by the judge. So it's interesting to see if anything further will come out of this, because what tends to happen is the political bubble happens, so you fire a shot across the bow. Usually it's something quick, right? And it's not something that's sustained, generally speaking. So now that there's a roadblock, I'll actually be surprised if this issue is sustained. That is to say, sustained with regards to the government continuing to pursue it in a very public and direct manner.
I doubt to the extent that we've seen. I think things usually, just as I've always suggested, die a natural death.
Exactly.
The thing is that even though he hasn't blocked Cabinet from seeing that information, laying it in Parliament would mean it goes on Hansard.
Yeah.
And it goes on public record. And I think that is what Gary Griffith want it blocked. And the judge has agreed with that part. And this is the judgment, Gary Griffith versus the National Security Council. Like I said, there's still the Police Service Commission and the Trans-Bengal Police Service investigation. And they are very much privileged to that report to use as part of their investigations. So following those investigations, whatever is concluded, we may actually learn of some contents of the report, possibly. But I am not entirely sure because I'm not I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not entirely sure how this judgment will affect the disseminating of information, concluding those two investigations.
My main thing that hit me, and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because the office of the Police Service Commission has the authority. So of course, that was the authority that commissioned the report. That's the authority where the judge is like, well, they should receive it, and to some extent how it happens is handled moving forward should come from there. It's just that it's an entirely different Police Service Commission. So personally, there's a part of me who's like, well, it's not the same people that commissioned it. So it's a weird situation, but legally speaking, I think, you can't make the distinction between the former members and the current members. Listen, so
from
at least not without good reason.
From plain view, my question, I've had two questions, just from plain view. What is the fair, there seems to be a fair off and a fair with Gary Griffith. I don't know what that is, but Gary Griffith also seems to have some concern or some fear with reports such as these. So
I wonder if the key point is to say executive summary, and then the question is, who wrote the summary?
Remember, the other issue is they had 4 police officers who were part of the firearms division of the police service.
So technically speaking, that should keep this topic moving forward. That should keep this matter hopefully moving forward. It's just the way how things go with investigations. Well, it's hard to have faith.
It depends. Is there an expectation that something will actually come out of it? Or is there the want for something to come out of it? Because laying the report in Parliament from the National Security Council may not necessarily affect Gary Griffith legally. But that's why I said, even from the Police Service Commission, that may not necessarily impact upon him legally. I'm more interested in the TTPS investigation, how long that's going to take, and the findings from that. That's what
I mean. At the end of the day, the cases, in theory, should be somewhat interlinked, and it would be difficult to keep them 100% separate. That is to say, we assume that Gary Griffith is a subject or somebody named in this report. Here's my thing, though. The fact that the information was never made public, that is to say, what was told to the president to make her do something that she technically had no legal authority to do. It literally does not say that she could withdraw the list. What made her do that? But more importantly, it also seems as though the government is no longer pushing to try to get this in Parliament. So I am curious with regards to what is in it, because really and truly, if there was something unethical going on to a serious degree that would cause you to circumvent proper procedure, that you would claim you want to release into Parliament, etc., etc., how is it all of a sudden, well, it's not so important anymore and we don't need to talk about it?
Because the current set of politicians may not necessarily think as you are, as we are, because they've already gotten what they've wanted. They've already achieved what they wanted to achieve. You see, Gary Griffith is no longer in that position. But what the Prime Minister's position was, and I would have assumed still is, in wanting that executive summary to be laid in Parliament, publicly, by him actually suggesting these things and fighting it down, saying, I was disturbed reading this report, I want to lay it in Parliament, let it go on Hansard. It only concretizes his argument further why there was a need for Gary Griffith to not be a part of that office. We don't know those exact reasons, but he did state, and furthermore, this is a separate thing to why the merit list was withdrawn. This is a separate thing.
Do we know that for sure?
Well,
No, we don't.
in terms of two cases, the report, the investigation into the FUL and the withdrawal from the list, at this time is two separate matters. There may be some link, but as we discuss it...
But Keaton, based on the timing, you can't say that because we don't know that something else was given to the president and not information regarding to the matters that's included in this investigation.
The Prime Minister stated that as head of the National Security Council and as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, he took that decision because he could not see this happening again. The thing is, I'm not playing on whims and fancies here. I'm just saying that an investigation was conducted. The merit list was withdrawn, I understand that, but putting that aside, an investigation was conducted. One, having an investigation into Gary Griffith only strengthens the Prime Minister's reasoning or arguments that Gary Griffith shouldn't be the Commissioner of Police. Two, saying I read the report and it made for disturbing reading and that you want to lay it in Parliament, that also strengthens the Prime Minister's argument publicly, from a public relations perspective.
I understand that.
But that's the thing. Why go beyond that? Gary Griffith is already out of the position.
Here's the thing. If we don't hold him, because you made claims, this is bad. All of a sudden, it's not bad. All of a sudden, we could pause, right? Because Gary Griffith, no. If it's bad, it doesn't matter. It's not just about him being commissioner or not. If it's that bad, then it's probably criminal, then it should be looked into. So we can't take it that you're serious about crime fighting if you're going to pull the brakes now, because you said it yourself. Kind of reinterpret what you just said. He didn't want to lay it in Parliament. He wanted to say he wanted to lay it in Parliament. He didn't want the investigation concluded. He wanted to have an investigation, to say he had an investigation, because publicly those things cement his case to help him get Gary Griffith not be Commissioner of Police. But
Sean, you must also understand that it's easy for what you're saying to be said publicly now. If the judge, Justice Rampersad, had not given this particular judgment with the executive summary having to be, could not be laid in Parliament, then are you making the assumption that the Prime Minister would not have done it? You know, remember, this is a judgment. This is the discussion we're having following the judgment. Had this not been partially in favour to Gary Griffith, the Prime Minister would have probably made the executive summary.
I actually suspect no.
I think it would have been.
Because again, there's a reason why he was never able to publicly say anything. And the reason that he said against Gary Griffith was not anything to do with this, but it was something that easily was nonsensical and unreasonable. So,
but hold on. How could you say that if you yourself just mentioned that he never publicly stated his exact reasoning?
No, the public reason that he gave with regards to Gary Griffith was that he lost faith in him, and then there was reference made to the fact of how the public health regulations were being enforced, which when you put two and two together, it does not add up, it does not make four, just based off his own behavior and how he dealt with the public health regulations and how his administration dealt with the public health regulations and how his administration dealt with other people who did not necessarily were not responsible for public health regulations.
I think we have to go for a break, but it's a very interesting position that you've just taken.
But I've publicly made that case before.
You've also publicly praised the government for doing more or less a good job in the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Except the public health regulations, which I've also stated more than once before.
I know there were controversies there, but anyway, I think that's where we have to conclude now for this particular discussion, but we will take a break here on Talking Point. And when we return, we welcome our first guest for this morning. Stay tuned.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you do in Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of
of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And normally we would be speaking about Tobago, having those discussions on a Tuesday, but we were unable to have that discussion. But graciously, our guest was able to reschedule, and I'm welcoming this morning Mr. Martin George, attorney at law and the chairman of the Tobago Business Chamber. Good morning, Mr. George.
Yes, hi, good morning to you, and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
So, Mr. George, just to start things off, generally speaking, we've spoken to a few stakeholders with regards to the recovery from the pandemic and all of the economic turmoil. Tobago, from my own experience, as well as talking to people who live there, it still seems to be a lot slower than Trinidad in the sense that you could see it. It's not just about the recent rise of food prices. I'm talking about all of the effects still coming out of the pandemic lockdowns. It just has not come back to what it was before the pandemic. Is that correct to say? Still?
Indeed, that is correct, because the fact of the matter is that we are still seeing the effects of the pandemic in terms of the fact that some of the businesses have not recovered, some have not even been able to restart at all since the pandemic. So it has been challenging in that regard. And I mean, you also recognize that in terms of the THA, which for many Tobagonians is the largest trading partner or business entity that they do business with, the THA has also been constrained in terms of its own finances. So therefore, in those circumstances, we have seen some persons not been able to maximize in terms of their business arrangements. We are also still constrained by the shortage of flights between Trinidad and Tobago. It is absolutely ludicrous that you have a scenario where the last flight out of Port of Spain is 8:30 p.m. That's absolutely untenable. It makes no sense whatsoever, and there's no real justification why that is still so. If you recall, some time ago, the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly indicated to Cal that, look, if finances were a problem in terms of having staff available for that, for the later flights, the THA was willing to step forward and assist. We've heard nothing in terms of that. So why are we still in that type of scenario? Even the post-carnival bump that Tobago normally gets in terms of visitors from Trinidad and from overseas, it has been basically flat. it has not really panned out the way it normally would.
Now, Mr. George, good morning, sir. On that particular note of Caribbean Airlines, I do recall last year when Caribbean Airlines suggested that the domestic air bridge was a cause or perhaps a major contribution to its financial positioning. You took umbrage to that. I mean, has there been any further clarifications or discussions or consultations with Caribbean Airlines over this situation? Because time and time again, as we speak to guests over the economic situation in Tobago, they're constantly referencing the domestic air bridge. And as much as we hear it publicly, it seems as though Caribbean Airlines are yet to hear it as well.
Well, Caribbean Airlines and its leadership continues to remain deaf, dumb, and blind to the pleas of ordinary Tobagonians. The powers that be and the government remains immune, unconcerned, and nonchalant in its response to the cries of ordinary Tobagonians, because it is a fact that they have undersupplied that air bridge. And when you hear Caribbean Airlines talking rubbish, and I make no apologies for saying so, talking rubbish about the air bridge being a cause of loss making, what is a cause of loss making is the billions of dollars that Carl has wasted over the years on all sorts of flights of fancy and frolics and, follies that have brought no revenue whatsoever. Going to Qatar, carrying a contingent to Qatar and talking, absolute poppycock about you want a strategic partnership with Qatar Airlines. Has any one of them ever traveled on Qatar Airlines? I have traveled on Qatar Airlines. Qatar is like the number 1 or number 2 airline in the world. They and Emirates, they're always competing for the number 1 spot. They are light years ahead of Carl. Why would they want to partner with Carl? What does Carl bring to the table in any partnership with Qatar Airways? Let's be realistic. And you can't even fix a 15-minute flight between Trinidad and Tobago, and you are selling us pipe dreams about you want to have a strategic partnership with Qatar Airways. That's the folly that Carl has been wasting our money on and continue to waste our money on. That's what they continue to do. So when they talk about the air bridge being a drain on their finances, it's almost as if you have an essential service, because that's what it is. Connectivity between the islands is an essential service. So it's almost as if somebody were to say, well, the hospitals are not making money, so therefore let's close down Port of Spain General Hospital, let's close down San Fernando General Hospital. It's as absurd and palpably stupid as that.
Well, Mr. George, one of the things that I've been told in Tobago, things are so rough that basically businesses cannot advance lines of credit to other businesses. Everything has to be done in cash right now. And given the fact that the bottleneck of the air bridge and sea bridge, to what extent is all of these things just hampering growth? Because I think people think, oh, that's just tourism. But what about the other businesses now, the rest of the private economy on Tobago? Is it also being heavily affected because there's not enough just money flowing, circulating on the island?
Well, as we all know the saying, transportation is the lifeblood of an economy. So in other words, if you don't have proper or adequate transportation, you will always have challenges. So we're talking about goods being able to come to Tobago, goods leaving Tobago. You're talking about service providers having access to come to Tobago, or to be able to deliver their services. So it is a major constraint, and there is absolutely no reason why, after all these years, we are still behaving as if this is planning a trip to Mars. That's how Carl makes it look, They make it seem as if, well, this Tobago route is so difficult that, look at SpaceX. Elon Musk is able to get his spaceship up and running and have it going. Jeff Bezos is able to get his spaceship up and running. Come on, what is it that we cannot get right in a 15-minute flight, or in terms of the sea bridge, a 2.5-hour ferry ride? There's so many, countries in the world, for instance, all through Europe, you have scenarios where persons just drive on their vehicles onto the ferry carries you across, you drive off, and it's a seamless transition. Why do we continue to make these things in Trinidad and Tobago appear to be, like launching a lunar spaceship?
Mr. George, I know you've mentioned Caribbean Airlines and the executive management of Caribbean Airlines. You've also referenced central government. But with respect to the efforts being made by the Tobago House of Assembly, how would you rate it? We've heard from Dr. Varnish James saying that the Tobago economy is drowning. We've heard similar expressions and thoughts from Dan Haddad. From your position, how would you rate the THA's efforts as it relates to not only the inter-island transportation and trying to get central government to up it, but generally the flow of things on the island?
All right, so if we're talking about the THA executive, which has just completed a little more than a year in office, what I would say is that as yet there appears to be no clear, meaningful, and sustained economic plan that they have. It seems that they have run out of ideas, and one wonders if they had any ideas coming into office at all. So they are just basically repeating the same template and pattern of going with the begging bowl to central government every year and saying, well, look, please, sir, can I have more? Just as in Oliver Twist, the William Shakespeare play. So therefore, we really have not seen any new initiatives, new ideas, not any sort of innovation whatsoever. And of course, they have had their own internecine warfare with Mr. Watson Duke and, the fallout from that. And I think that still continues to bedevil their operations. So they are basically just in a holding pattern. And of course, then you still have the complaints from many Tobago business persons and contractors who say that the THA has not paid them. So therefore, we still have scenarios there where persons are saying, look, I have not received my monies, I have done work. So therefore, once you have those types of scenarios and the finances are not flowing, and then of course, on top of that, you also had the complaints where people are saying that, look, even for new contracts, they are being given to contractors from Trinidad rather than at least seeking to, ensure there's some level of parity or equity in terms of the distribution to Tobago contractors also. So you have quite a number of issues which remain unresolved, and certainly I don't think that they have really lived up to expectations from an economic standpoint in terms of bringing Tobago's business back to where it should be.
Well, speaking about business, tourism, now to just focus on that, that is heralded as perhaps a really untapped private industry in Tobago that could do a lot for both the island as well as the country. However, right now, both in, I believe, in Tobago as well as nationally, the government is effectively the largest hotel owner because they own more hotels than anyone else. As well as the fact that now we don't necessarily see much of a plan with regards to developing tourism, so much so that they're trying to, as they have reopened a refurbished Manta Lodge, they're trying to divest themselves of Magdalena. It makes one wonder exactly what is the plan, and do you think tourism is really getting enough attention, enough resources to truly matter, because diversification is just thrown about and tourism is thrown about and we don't really see much results?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the fact of the matter is there's absolutely no plan. And when you have persons who don't have a clue as to what tourism is about or how to market an island or, an understanding of where you are in the tourism landscape, then clearly you will have these operations going by fits and starts, and by and large, it turns out to just be joyrides that they take. They go to the World Trade Fair in Berlin, and they go to other places, and it's family and friends, and it's really just a case of basically you've put hungry people to guard food. So therefore, you will always have that challenge, because the point is, if you have someone with that type of never see come see attitude, all they're doing is looking for a free flight or a free trip or a free meal, and they have absolutely no sense or idea of how to put together a comprehensive medium to long-term tourism strategy. I mean, if they had any clue about that, they would never have opposed the development of sandals and beaches, which would have been the single most important development for Tobago. You look and see what that did for Grenada, and Grenada's tourism is now, shooting through the roof. So therefore, it's clear that you have persons who don't even know what they are doing. They don't have a clue where they're going, and therefore they can't lead us anywhere.
Mr.
They
George,
will end up like the Israelites wandering around in the desert for circles for 40 years.
Mr. George, final question. We just have about 45 seconds left for this interview, but this trip to Germany, was it worth it?
Well, I don't know yet, because we haven't had the post-mortem or any full report from the Chief Secretary and the team. But I again wonder whether this was not just another joyride for family and friends. But I will still give them the benefit of the doubt and allow them to give a full and comprehensive report when they get back, because I saw they made a short stop in Jamaica also.
Yes.
I didn't know that was part of the official itinerary to start with, but we see that happening. So again, it makes you question these things and wonder, who do we really have leading us in these scenarios?
Well, Mr. George, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning on the program. We appreciate you expressing your thoughts and opinions with us, and we look forward to welcoming you to Talking Point once more again. But take care, sir, and all the very best.
It's always a pleasure and a great morning to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George.
To you too, sir. Well, there seems to be just that same tune that is being played from almost every ambit, every corner of Tobago. Not enough is being done. It seems as though we've run out of ideas, it makes you wonder if what Ansel Dennis suggested, that the situation in Tobago is actually now worse under this administration.
I wouldn't necessarily say worse. I would agree with people who might want to criticize that it's not necessarily better. It's difficult to judge after just 1 year. But we're not necessarily seeing things to give us enough confidence to really, have ultimate faith. I think what Mr. George was implying was, with all that he said, look, all of these issues we have is because we have no comprehensive plan. So because we shoot it in the dark and we're trying to deal with everything one, it's all a mess.
Well, why is it worse? Why would I suggest, or why would I take the position that it's worse? It's because the campaign for the Tobago House of Assembly began the day after the election in 2021. And all of what we're hearing and all of what is being suggested, it only strengthens the PNM's position in Tobago.
Well, I'll just say this, Mr. George. Let's say it looks as though they're running the same playbook. And based on what I've seen, I wouldn't necessarily say it's worse. I think the lowest they could get is it's more of the same. So I don't know if that, in the long run, if anybody's discerning enough, if that really makes the PNM look like a viable alternative. But we'll wait and see. Because Ansel Dennis, if he wins, you have to give him his fair chance too.
Well, let's take a break here with the program, and when we return, we'll welcome our next guest for this morning. We'll be right back after this.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order, or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Welcome back to the program. Now, it gives me great pleasure, and I know that Sean is smiling as well, that we welcome back to Talking Point a familiar face. She's had enough of a break. So welcome back to Talking Point, Senator Jayanti Lakshmi-Dayal. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We're doing well. We hope you're doing well. We know that you're very busy these days, as we mentioned off air.
Yes. Lots of stuff going on. So, been busy, but glad to be back.
Well, I know one thing that's keeping everybody busy and glued is the conversation surrounding the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, as well as the DPP himself, Roger Gasper. Now, he had a meeting yesterday with the Attorney General, a 3-hour-long meeting, though he did not take any questions from the media following that meeting. But we're now aware that lawyers from the office of the DPP, 16 to be exact, have written a 2-page letter to the Attorney General actually asking him to apologize for his comments that they are underperforming. This is a back and forth, Senator Lakshmi-Dayal. It's a constant blame game, a constant back and forth. How do we, for the benefits of Trinidad and Tobago and for the benefits of the citizens, really find a way out of this?
Well, firstly, I think this situation calls for, persons to take responsibility. I think that at the end of the day, this is not an office that doesn't affect the citizens of this country. So people, the average man and woman on the ground, deserves to know if it is that they have matters in court, whether they are accused of a crime, whether they are the victim of a crime, and those matters are lingering for 10 years and cannot get started and so on. And one of the issues affecting the speed at which justice is delivered in this country is in fact understaffing at the DPP's office. You simply do not have lawyers to send to court. The Chief Justice has been making comments, calling on the DPP to send lawyers to staff the courts and so on. And the DPP is saying, look, we're on the brink of collapse here because I just don't have the lawyers. Someone has to explain why. Why have we arrived here? We, and the thing about it is people don't pay attention when you're speaking, and people like to say the opposition isn't helping, we're not offering solutions, etc. I went back to my budget debates in 2020 when I highlighted some of these issues, because of course a lot of what it has to do with expenditure. You have a government spending millions of dollars, somewhere in the vicinity of $45 to $50 million on private briefs for attorneys from London who are here to advise on one matter or two matters of a politically sensitive nature, but they are not allocated. It took them since 2020 when they opened and had a big ceremony to get the keys for this new office for the DPP. And since then to now, they have not been able to complete all the work that is necessary to fulfill the recommendations of the special branch and have the building ready for the DPP to move into. That's one thing. The second thing is, while you are getting the building ready, well, hire staff. When the partnership government was in office, they took the time, and anybody who knows the public service knows how challenging it is to make changes for structural things in terms of staff structure and create new positions and all of that. That was done and approved by the cabinet in 2013. The process started. Of course, the first thing to do was to identify space. That process had begun. and the structure was approved, I would see 137 attorneys staffing the DPP's office in specialized units so that you would have, upward mobility for people in fields that they were comfortable with. Some people do not like to do, for example, sexual offenses. Some people are very good with fraud matters because they're more technical in that field. So you would have seen people being able to specialize, which is how it is in every modern prosecution service in the world. And that's what the partnership had tried to create. Instead of throwing insults about underperforming and so on, which is a really baseless, tactless statement to make from an attorney general, what the attorney general should do is say where they have reached with the implementation of that plan, because that will solve a lot of the problems. It would help with the actual physical warm bodies to send to the courtroom. It would help with retaining staff. What you had happen here is a mass exodus of staff to greener pastures, and you can't blame people for that. That's upward mobility in your career. The government chose to build out the judiciary. So the judiciary, of course, had their plans, and they rolled out their plans. They created more courts, more courtrooms. They appointed more judges. They created a different tier within the judicial system called masters within the criminal side. That's something we didn't have before. That's all well and good. Fine. They hope that it will help deal with the backlog, right? But if in any courtroom, and I said this again in my last budget speech in 2022, in any courtroom you need 3 people, a minimum. You need the judicial officer, you need the prosecutor, and you need a defense attorney. So you've built out capacity in the judiciary, and you've hired a lot of staff. You've hired a lot of people for the public defender's office, a big boast of this government. But all of the people who went into those positions, a substantial amount of them came from DPP. I am not in the system, but simple common sense and observation. I looked at the last tranche of judges to enter the judiciary on the criminal side, and they represented basically the entire mid-level and upper-level staff of the DPP's office. They have left, and they have gone and they have joined the judiciary. Great, I'm happy for them. Congratulations. They've worked very hard. I know many of them. They've worked many, many years toiling in the fields, and they deserve that. But do you have people trained and competent to take their position? Are you attracting people to now come into that position? That is the conversation we need to be having, not who underperforming. How do you expect somebody, a department, to perform at optimal when they have less than half of the staff that they need to have? You understand? That is just a ridiculous statement.
There seems to be, on top of everything else, there seems to be an issue with regards to recruitment, because based on our previous conversations, people will leave the office of the DPP, and it's only after some time, and many have left, they will bring in a whole batch that have to all be trained at once. That's one of the things that some of our other...
Correct. And the batch that's coming in are usually people with no experience.
Right.
So you're not hiring people at the level of, mid-level 5 to 10 years experience and that kind of thing. Look, the job of a prosecutor, very, very, very difficult job. It is physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically draining. And you have to really have a personality that could withstand all of that in order to stay for a very long time in that job. But it's a great place to get experience. The thing about it is that when you get, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you know this. I started my career at the DPP's office. I was placed there straight out of law school because I was on the scholarship program, and they had to place you into a position, and I was placed there. I wanted to go there, and I stayed for 6 years, and then I left because at the time, with 6 years experience, I was qualified for and applied for and got jobs that was paying me double the salary that I was getting as a state prosecutor. And that's just the reality of the situation. State attorneys entering into the DPP's office are paid the same salary as a lawyer who is going to prosecute, let's say, somebody suing the state for, I don't know, they slip and fall down on a pavement and they fall into or they bend the ankle in a pothole or whatever it is, and you sue the civil side, right? The civil attorneys. Of course, there are also much more complex matters than that. But you're talking about the people who have to meet with the police, advise the police, determine whether or not criminal charges should be laid against someone. If the charges are laid, then that person is responsible for now going to court and actually standing up in a courtroom with a criminal, his whole family, everybody looking at you, a man accused of a crime, and you are basically there trying to convict this person. I mean, I was sharing on another interview this morning some of my experiences as a prosecutor. I remember briefing a witness at a police station to give evidence the next day, and within 2 hours of leaving that station, I got a call that he has gone down. And those are the things you deal with as a prosecutor. How can you say to someone who's doing that job that you're paying them the same thing? You're not paying any kind of special allowance for the security risk that you take. You're not giving them the support we've never had. And this is, again, something since 2020 that I raised. You've never had the type of support systems in place in terms of, secretarial and clerical support in the department. You need, it's an intensive, fast-paced environment where you are called upon. You essentially have a responsibility to a victim, but you also have a responsibility to even an accused person to make sure they are getting justice. There's a famous slide that says, as a prosecutor, you're a minister of justice. You're not there just to get a conviction. You are there to ensure that justice is done. At the same time, you have to vet files. You have to know the law. It's a difficult job. So recruiting people, you are not going to get that done unless you improve the terms and conditions. So nobody's going to sign up for that kind of job on the kind of salaries that they are paying currently.
Well, therein lies my question. To some extent, is it that the system, it's not so much that the people in charge did not recruit, but more the people in charge are not trying to fix the flaws of the system that's making it so unbalanced and difficult?
Well, there are two sides of that. It's a difficult, so you have to look at terms and conditions to make it less difficult or to make it more attractive for people to not just come. A lot of people want to come into the DPP's office. I've been lots of people who come to me as young lawyers out of law school and train and so on, they want to get in there. I always touch base with me. They want to go in. They just don't want to stay. So there are two things. After a couple of years, people leave. So you have to make it possible or make it attractive for them to stay. Create the system, as I remember, it was very narrow. So again, the 2013 plan that was approved that hasn't been implemented would make us see a broader system. You would not have contract employment. Again, as something that I've been raising all the time, contract employment in the public service has taken over. When you're a contract officer, you can't remember. People have lives, they want to get a mortgage, they want to live. You want a sense of security. It is also, I think, very wrong for people discharging functions like a prosecutor with responsibility to be, fair to no matter who is the accused or the victim in a matter, that they are beholden to the political directorate to renew their contract. That is extremely wrong. So that is why you had a system designed for a broader range of positions, the potential for upward mobility, permanent positions with benefits and so on, and not contract positions.
Senator Luchmedial,
yeah.
Sorry, if I may just ask you, with the evolution of this entire situation, are we just, plain and simple, seeing the politicization of the office of the DPP and perhaps the creation of another hand or arm of government?
Well, we've been very concerned for a long time about the privatization of investigations and prosecutions. Simply because for that same reason, people being paid large sums of money for, to basically work on matters as directed by the executive, by the political directorate. It's now in the public domain that just on the eve of the 2020 general election, July of 2020, Cabinet approved $45 million to be paid to this firm in London to deal with specific matters. $45 million, I think, could pay the salaries of 600 senior state counsel. Senior state counsel is somebody who's like 8 to 10 years experience. For about a year, we don't even have enough crime in this country to deal with 600 state counsel. We have 58, and most of them are very junior, and we're struggling. All right, so we have to see now why it is. Is it enough to fold your hand and say, well, the DPP's office can't handle it, so we need to pay external people? Or should you be diverting those resources to building capacity in the DPP's office, to having independent, insulated persons, free from political influence, treating with matters? That, in my view, is the more is preferable. So, again, the DPP was not left out of the process. I think he was very actively participating in it when that structure was designed. And getting back to your original question, where do we go from here? What they need to do is to start getting that structure built out. Start recruiting people. I know many, many good lawyers who would, if offered the right work environment, the right circumstances, the permanent positions and so on, would jump at the opportunity to work at the DPP's office in one of the specialized units and so on, invest money in training people and keeping them on the job, and get moving, because at the end of the day, the people who suffer the most from this situation are people who are the victims of crime. And that really is a situation that, I mean, it should trouble any right-thinking person, because it is the victim who is waiting to get justice. Even the persons who may be wrongly accused and waiting for their day in court, they are also victims of a system. And any system that has delays creates, injustice. And so when you want to get around that, you really have to start fixing the system. And if there's a plan there, I can't see why the plan isn't being properly implemented. I can't see why simple fixes like getting staff hired at a mid-level with some experience to carry a little bit of the burden. And, overall though, in the long term, what we do have to look at is really better manpower planning in the public service. And this is, again, something that I've raised in the past. Things like people taking up other positions and so on, it's not something that you can't predict. It's not something, retirement is not something that you can't predict. I don't know why someone has to retire from a permanent position at a senior level within the public service, and then it takes 6 months for them to issue an advertisement for the position and so on.
Senator, I'll have to cut you there. My apologies, but thank you very much for your time this morning on the program. It's good seeing you once more, and we look forward to your continued presence and conversation on the program.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day. Very interesting comment there. When there are delays, you create injustice. Just remember that, folks. But let's break for news on the hour now, and when we return, we open up the phone lines this morning.
Here's your WASN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Man charged in prison for 2022 San Fernando murder. Firearm, ammunition, drugs and cash seized in intelligence-led exercises. Man gunned down outside supermarket. And internationally, deadly floods inundate Turkish cities hit by quakes. Now for the details. A 60-year-old man will appear before a San Fernando magistrate on April 6th, charged with the murder of Nirmala Jagannath, which occurred on August 11th, 2022. Cliff Hossain was charged with the offense on Tuesday. 64-year-old Jagannath was at her Point-a-Pier Road, San Fernando home when she allegedly got into an argument with a man. Sometime later, her body was found lying motionless in the house, and a report was made to the police. Hossain is currently serving a sentence for larceny offences in the Central Division. A firearm and quantities of ammunition and drugs were seized by officers during a series of coordinated intelligence-led activities conducted in the Northern, Western and Northeastern Divisions on Tuesday. In the North, Central and Northern Divisions, officers attached to the Aruca Criminal Investigations Department proceeded to a bushy area along the Eastern Main Road. There, they conducted a search which resulted in one revolver being discovered in a plastic bag. The same party of officers then proceeded to Malabar Arima, where they recovered a stolen vehicle. In the Western Division, task force officers conducted an anti-crime exercise, during which they executed a search warrant at an apartment at West Hills, Petty Valley. The officers found $20,000 in cash, which could not be properly accounted for by the sole male occupant of the apartment. A man was shot and killed in San Fernando outside a grocery store. Reports say the incident happened just after noon on Wednesday outside Southern Food Basket, San Fernando, Emily Street. Investigations are continuing. In international news now, 14 people have died and several others are missing after floods swept through the streets of two cities in southeast Turkey, devastated by last month's quakes. Among the victims were quake survivors who had been living in container homes since the quakes. Cars tumbled on a torrent of flood water through the streets where 12 people died. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you to Ms. Denise Martin for news on the hour. And ladies and gentlemen, we had Mr. Martin George on the program this morning to discuss this. He doesn't hold back, does he?
No. Not even in the current teacher administration. He very much spoke his mind. I can't say that he's wrong, right? Maybe it might not work out that way in some of what he said, but, can't say it was very reasonable, everything that he said.
Yes, there is nothing to suggest that his criticisms were unjustifiable. But also we welcomed Senator Jency Dutch Media back to Talking Point. A very long time since we've had her, but we're very much pleased just to continue this conversation on the office of the DPP. So we now have an all-round understanding of the situation. I believe you and Karen also addressed that yesterday on the program.
Yes, so Karen thinks that, they're trying to force the DPP out. It's interference on an office that should be independent. I think what the senator said, it more or less, she implied very heavily that, look, a lot of money is being spent on private attorneys to do things on a case-by-case basis. If we took that money, she said it herself, how much attorneys' salaries they could pay for just a year. You could pay more to attract mid-level talent and to retain talent so that you don't necessarily have this uncertainty and upheaval.
Another issue is that, even if you make the contract, very much more appealing to those, many of the contracts now within the public service are 3-month contracts.
Yeah.
And that is also an issue.
No, and she brought that up. Permanency, I understand to some extent. The problem is it's always a compromise. People can take advantage of a permanent position, but then the flip side is governments can take advantage of contract work. So you can't just do a basic one or the other. You have to figure out something a little bit more specific to each situation.
I think that's something we should examine more actually, because from the very looks of it, I think contracts may be more beneficial, but it's something we will
not to say that we should get rid of contracts, but like I said, people could take advantage of permanent positions. That's one of we see problems on both ends. So one can't solve the other. We have to figure out solutions, because there'll be situations where we need permanent positions. There'll be situations where it's better for contract.
I'll tell you what, let's open up the phone lines now. We give you the opportunity to comment on this morning's edition of the program. If there's anything else that Sean and I did not cover, feel free to discuss. We only ask that you be mindful of your time, of your contribution, and to kindly mute your television when calling in the program. I do have a question to ask you before we take our very first caller. My question is simple. Could you name one office within the public service, within the public sector, that is independent? Could you name one office?
You mean actually practically independent?
Yes.
And not
independent
supposed to
on
be
paper, yes.
Rhetorically, right?
Could you name that for me? We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Unfair question, eh? Unfair question. I would like to say firstly this morning hello to the caller from Dabadi, who talks about solutions. And I bring this up because I listened to Mr. Martin George this morning ranting as if he's in a courtroom and bringing no solution to the issues of Tobago. He outlined, we know all the problems in Tobago. My thing is this, people are forgetting that the world, including Tobago, is coming out of a pandemic. And while we see the falls in Tobago, the THA still, in my opinion, we still need to let them build out. But okay, it's been a year, but they are new. That people need to understand they are new and they are trying. I am no lover of the administration, you know, but give them a chance. My thing is give them a chance. It's a difficult situation, and what has to happen in Tobago is that Tobago needs to look at, in terms of the tourism, look at Barbados, look at Grenada, look at St. Lucia, look at Antigua. What they do is that they have treated their tourism as if it was their oil. The same way we did our economy when we had when we built out our economy in the 70s and the 80s. We used our oil to do what they have to start to look at it and say this is our oil. So they keep relying on this this 4.03%. Use that as your buffer, but try to build out and use it as if it is oil. And you see the air bridge? That air bridge, the complication of the air bridge, nobody is really looking into that air bridge and understanding the complications of the air bridge. Understanding it's a question of cost. If the state refuses to pay their portion of their subsidy to the airline, we're going to have this problem, and they are not doing that. People not understanding that the state is not paying their subsidy, and over the pandemic period, I am certain that cost, it was the break-even cost per seat to Tobago was $700 return, and I am sure it has gone up. So we need to look at that and understand that Caribbean Airlines, they have to run the business, and that talk about Qatar and all that. That is red herring that Mr. Martin just put inside it. And one other thing, gentlemen.
Quite quickly.
With Mrs. Lakshmi Dial, who she really brings solutions and she really puts over a good argument. You see, what we spoke about yesterday, Sean, you realize that letter that those 16 attorneys on the DPP road talks about that building and the reason why they have not been in the building. So Mr. Prime Minister and Chris Gerald Hines, they really have an agenda to remove this man. They really do have an agenda to remove this man. And once again, morning, Mr. Dabadi. Bye.
Good morning, sir. Caller on the line with us from Currap. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good program as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to tell our last caller, go to the head of the class, because he touched on most of the things I wanted to speak about. The problem in Trinidad and Tobago is management. Management. You understand? In almost all sectors. The same Carly speak about the airlines, not proper management. You understand? We having problem with serious, even in ministries, not proper management, administration and management. Those are the two words go together. Administrate properly and manage properly. I also want to say I'm no follower of the PDP, but I was so proud to see the young people who the people had voted in to do things, development in Tobago. I was so proud when I see mostly young people and a lot of women. You think? And some people get on as though the country, only PNM must be in power. I remember when the Nairo was in power and PNM had one only seat in the House of Assembly. God rest his soul, Mr. Mackenzie. He was the minority leader, remember? He was the only PNM. And then PNM came back and got back into the House of Assembly, and then they had a majority. So give people a chance. As the last caller said, give them a chance to prove themselves.
Yes.
You understand?
Certainly.
I don't want to say too much more, but I think the independent office, they speak about it in the DPP office. You ask a question, but one independent office in Trinidad, I feel it's the DPP office.
Possibly.
And I want to say, we're going back again with management and administration. This man has been clamoring for years to top up his office with management, human resource. Why come to this now?
Yeah. All right, caller. Thank you very much.
Very good program. I looked on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Keep well. For the third time this morning, good morning, Dabadi.
Yeah, pleasant morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here in that at least we are reaching the ears of some of these citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. A special morning to my friend here. I think it's from South.
Yes.
Pleasant morning to him. Gentlemen, I don't know if you would allow me to use a word. I don't know, it might be offensive, and it is called dramatist. I believe the sentiments echoed this morning, not by Mr. Martin George personally, as him as a person, but the things that he was saying sound very much like a dramatist. Right? I think I was able to put that over politically correct. The Tobago House of Assembly, I think they mean well. They need some time. And just as you always saying, after the pandemic, they are yet to play catch-up. And I think it could be because of the economics of things. And somehow they are not very innovative as young people, because the last chief sec, I think, that showed innovativeness was Hochoy Charles. And he needs the chief sec, who is the leader of the EHA, he needs to show a little more gumption and be more risky with respect to his actions, you know. And I think that if you give them some time, they'll get it wrong. It's a work in progress. Wonderful program, gentlemen. Thanks very much for the opportunity, and you'll have a blessed day.
Thank you.
You too, caller. Thank you very much. Good morning, caller from Shagonas. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
First of all, congratulations to you young men again for excellent discussion. And
thank you.
permit me, if I can, to comment on the interventions made by Mr. George of Tobago. And it goes to the whole question of tourism development, which I think is a major, failing in this country and turning out to be a real joke. I want to make comment, without going into what he said about people flying off to these fairs and taking the whole tanty and Nenin and everybody with them, and then coming back and you cannot see the results. There's no follow-up to say we have gained so much more in tourism arrivals, or we have achieved this or that. And what I'm saying is this: we have a crime situation in Trinidad. A lot of countries have crime situations, but they are managed. And what we need to do in Trinidad is to look at a managed tourism environment. But when you put square pegs in round holes, people who don't understand a damn about tourism is about try and pan, I have friends who will tell me, because they don't understand the whole evolution of pan and so on, is noise all you're hearing. They told me it's noise. And while as a patriot I might disagree vehemently, when I sit back and listen, it is true. We have to tailor our music, that's what it is. Recently we had 2 international bloggers pass through Trinidad and Tobago, and you know what they were focusing? Food.
Yeah.
Food. Okay? Food. Why Trinidad is all its culinary offerings, all its cultural and ethnic inputs into our culinary landscape cannot brand Trinidad as the food, the spice capital of the world. We have maruca pepper, we have hot food. Look at this guy, Mark Weems, I think was his name.
Yes.
And they were going crazy about it. You can have a contained setting for a spicy food festival. You have garlic capital of the world in the States. Spicy food capital, brand it, get your domain name, pin it down and build it, link it with the agriculture sector, link it with chefs, a whole bunch of upcoming chefs whose product I think needs to be improved, okay? And build it in a contained environment. So you can fly in, go to some various places, a company, whatever, safety and whatever, and they can come back and enjoy. It takes time to build. And
all right, caller.
Hearing something say it, and nobody's doing anything but talking about jumping up here and taking this side here and that side there. Barbados recently started talking about culinary, said the culinary input. Look at them. They don't have anything that we have in Trinidad.
Caller, my sincerest apologies.
Caller, sorry, but we have another caller behind you, so we're gonna have to cut you off there. But I agree with you. When I saw what Mark Weems had to say about his waiting to have a bacon shark, he was anticipating that for the longest while. We're known. We just don't. Don't take advantage.
I don't know if you recall Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmer.
Yes.
He said bacon shark was in his top 5 sandwiches he's ever eaten in his entire life.
Yep.
But I wouldn't want to eat a Mark Weems doubles though. That was just on a different level. How he dipped the bar in the pepper, and then he had more pepper than Chana.
Yeah, well, you have to get beyond that.
Good morning, caller from Shagonas. Good morning.
Sorry, I had to miss your show yesterday, but I had to go to Port of Spain again.
Same thing with me. I came to Port of Spain and still missed it.
Me, Mr. Shah pointed out that he had to get to Port of Spain and he gets there, and I said, well, the reason maybe I cannot drive as fast.
I didn't get there, don't worry.
Why yesterday he had his problem. As regards the DPP, I don't know how anybody could listen to the DPP and listen to everybody else and see any substance in anything anybody says against him. Right? I know what the problem with the DPP is. The powers to be, and it's from my experience in the public service, want him to do something that is improper. And he has no intention of doing it. Whether it's to prosecute somebody or not prosecute somebody, and this is the way they get at you. When I was in the public service and I took up that attitude, the staffing was, you had 15 people at the professional level. When I retired, 9 of the posts were vacant. And they had people there waiting on them. At the technical level, where you had 50 people at the recruitment level, all was vacant.
Mm-hmm.
And 10 years before, people had put in proposals to train people for the post. So as I believe within a year, they trained the people. Any questions, gentlemen?
Nope. You made a very good point there. I want to comment on it. I agree with your point, don't worry. I'm not disagreeing with you. But we have another caller after you. So thank you, Professor.
Yes. Good morning, caller from Trinity. Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Gentlemen, am I misled when I think that on the board of Caribbean Airlines there is a representative from Tobago, and many other organizations have representatives, in fact, from Tobago? Could you guide me?
I'm not very much aware with respect to Tobago, but I know that there are other boards, for example, HTC. THA has recently gotten a seat at the HTC board level. So
in the past, the Airbridge would have had people tied to Tobago on the board. I know Tobago Express and BWIA. Currently, I'm not sure because I don't know if that was a formal arrangement or just something that Mr. Manning did back when he was.
Your point, caller. To your point.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
That's it, caller?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought.
No, I guess he just had a question.
But no, that's actually a very good question.
A very important question.
Thank you for raising it, and I think Sean and I are very much due to do some research on that. So thank you for raising that point, caller from Trinity. You wanted to just comment on the last caller from Shagona's, his points with respect to the office of the DPP.
Well, I believe, because what he said is more or less in line, and he didn't see Karen yesterday, he just said he missed the show. But that's what Karen believes, and it's not reasonable to dismiss it out of hand. You have to consider it. You have to consider how is it that we could believe the government is serious about crime when the prosecutor's office, for all intents and purposes, is left in such disarray, is left so understaffed, and then they're attempting to blame the DPP, who does not have the authority to alleviate the same problems, in this case, that the Chief Justice is blaming him for directly. And now the AG is getting backlash for his angle that he took. So I agree with the professor. This is what it seems like. This is what it reasonably seems like. And if it's not the case, again, transparency works for you. And if you don't want to be transparent, do not blame people for coming to the wrong conclusion, because even if it's wrong, it's reasonable for us to think that they want the DPP to do something that is improper, and he's resisting it. So best to get rid of him. One way to undermine an independent office is to undermine its resources.
But I hear you, because to me, the political platform of which we are constantly hearing, the level of reasoning or arguments being put forward, up until this point, this morning, in all the conversation that I've heard, from what I understand, from what I've seen, Staffing is the issue.
Yes.
Up to now, the Prime Minister has not addressed that.
And that's, I like what the professor said. All of the things that were said about the DPP, can't really take it on.
$47 million in 3 years, and yet we're not able to hire one individual. And for the 10 staff that was recently hired to the office, the DPP is unaware. Good morning, caller from El Socorro. Goodbye, caller from El Socorro. Are you still with us? Hello?
Call back quick. We have a couple of minutes left. If you call back in a couple of minutes, we can take the call.
All right.
We have a call on the line? Good morning, caller.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. You know, people are arguing about this tourism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it reminds me of when Trinidad get oil money. We had talented people, creative people in this country. And when we get oil money, all that was dumped in favor of what I will call merchandising. People become super millionaires based on merchandising, bringing in other people goods and making this into a consumer society. Now, I'm killing off the natural talents of the Trinidadians, who might have been able to produce things based on their knowledge of or their ambition to produce goods and services of their own for marketing to the outside world. Now, if we don't have tourism in Tobago, what happened? What you all are saying, what other people are saying, that Tobago will fall flat? Think about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
I sometimes wonder as well.
But the thing is, industry-wise, that's what's potentially right to go now, right? There might be other things in Tobago, but to what extent is it developed widespread enough?
I like this reference that a few callers have actually made with respect to oil. The microscope is on tourism, as it was with oil, whilst we've failed to develop other sectors. It ties back into the first caller from Shigonas and what this gentleman has just suggested. Speaking specifically of one of the points that the caller from Shigonas raised, is that we do have products down here.
Yeah.
Ties that back into what this caller just said. We do have entrepreneurs who've actually created unique products.
I think, caller, to the last caller, that's the thing. Tourism is not going to suppress the creativity and the entrepreneurship of the island.
Well, to a certain extent, it has. To a certain extent,
but we don't have. Listen,
if there has been focus,
we don't have tourism. So what you're saying is the lack of a plan and development is what's suppressing, not tourism itself.
Could you just elaborate what you mean by you do have tourism?
When he said it's like the oil's prevalence and success suppress other industries. Tourism does not really have prevalence and success to suppress other industries and say we have to take resources out of those industries and put them into tourism.
I think you may be misinterpreting my point. That is, when there is creative focus on one area, you tend to actually neglect another. And that is the thing. I have seen it for myself. To the extent that we have so many products here in TNT, which I think are absolutely fantastic. And kudos, by the way, to many of these independent markets that are popping up and trying to promote these local products. I think we've totally neglected that. So if you speak about the manufacturing sector, and if you speak about trade and industry, I keep referencing the fact that here in TNT, one of the biggest hits in Holland is our hot peppers. And even this caller from Shigonas mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have not focused on those things enough. I keep asking, one soccer star launched a chocolate company. The Cocoa Development Company of Toronto decided to give him a grant, when there's so many other young entrepreneurs who have fantastic chocolates and up to this point in time cannot get a seat to be heard as to why it is there should be investment in their product as well.
But I believe her point was we could utilize our cultural offerings with tourism, right?
Yes.
And tourism, you have to be fair to tourism. Tourism has never really been a focus of this country to say that it's eclipsing or pulling away attention. Yes, maybe in the discussion, but agriculture also gets focused on with regards to diversification discussion. Okay, so if you want to say manufacturing is left out, fine.
Can I ask you, let me just ask you this question. If we've benefited so greatly from oil and natural gas, it gave us opportunity by means of affordability to import food.
Yes.
If we didn't have that ability in order to afford importing food, do you think there would have been more focus on local agriculture?
It's difficult to say. Maybe we would have ended up like a tourist island. Probably not, just because we have more space to play with, and I don't think we would literally put hotels.
No, I'm not speaking
Yeah.
about that.
No.
I'm speaking
with
about
regards to what
the affordability of food, for example.
Right. So, yeah, you see, the thing is, it all depends. If we figured out a cash cow industry that would have gotten us the foreign exchange, we might still be importing food. But because we have more space, I think it's reasonable to say that no, without something as dominating, economically speaking, as profitable as oil and gas, we probably would have had more food production locally on a practical level, because I don't think we would have been able to earn enough foreign exchange just to meet all of our needs. The economy would look very different though, because how it impacts the economy is multi-level, multi-tiered. So it's difficult to say exactly, on specifics what the results will be. Because, again, what fills the void and how much can it fill the void, or what things fill the void, we don't necessarily know. In fact, that's the struggle right now. We're trying to figure out what that would be.
I go back to Professor Brinsley-Samaru, who said that at one point Tobago was producing food for the people of Tobago and producing food for the people of Trinidad. And I keep suggesting this. I am of the opinion that we've been blessed and we've benefited in so many areas, particularly oil and gas, that has led us to the neglect. And it seems as though we do not have forward thinkers to actually say, okay, we still need to exploit oil and gas to the extent that we can. We're not looking at investments in other areas.
No.
It's plain sight.
One of the things, though, I understand what people wanted to say about detention, give them a chance, but I think it's similar to the current Commissioner of Police. To what extent can we afford to spend the time to give them a chance? And in Martin George's defense, there's only so much time for an interview, and this is the first time that we've had him speak about Tobago, so he was giving his opinion on the groundwork. I understand what people say that there wasn't much solutions, but a lot of what the callers came out with afterwards, well, the functions, the solutions, the way forwards they were pointing towards were government functions.
To what extent could you give them the time? This is my final point. You could give them the time. The people of Tobago gave the People's National Movement 18 years. 18 years. The people of Tobago, it's been just over 1 year. It's just been over 1 year with the PDP.
Yeah, but the circumstances are different.
Let me finish. I'm not justifying their position.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that everything is right. I'm simply suggesting that after 20% of their time in office has passed, I understand where everybody's coming from. It's been 1 year of nothing different. It seems as though it's just a continuation. But, as I said, 18 years versus 1 year, we have 4 more years to go. You never know what might change.
Well, even Mr. George said with regards to the latest trip to Germany, he's still willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. Despite the fact that he hasn't seen what he would like to see, he's still willing because they're new, right? So we hope that these are just the growing pains, because I really would not like this to be an indictment on newcomers to the political arena, because that is, I believe, what ultimately is the underlying solution to a lot of our problems.
And you're going to see a reshuffling of the THA executive soon. You will see that. So keep that in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to all our callers, and thank you to our guest this morning, Sean Michael Small. Thank you very much. And to all our directors. This has been Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keegan Shah, just reminding you that today is a good day to have a good day. And should things go well enough, Sean and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the Content Capital.